Today's chapter is called Cake Mixture and Compost. Grandad said it was hard work seeing the shape of New Zealand in his head before he could get it down on a map. He would say that, Granny said, turning the little handle so that the flour drifted out the bottom of the sifter. Believe me, drawing a map's easy. All you have to do is sketch the coast, pencil in the rivers and the mountains, but making it the place itself so you can put it on the map, that's a bit harder. Well, I suppose so, Granny. Of course it is. Then who made New Zealand? With her big wooden spoon, Granny stirred the cake mixture in the bowl. I repeated my question. Who made New Zealand, Granny? Granny put down the bowl, opened the oven door, put her hand inside and muttered something. She opened the top damper and said, "Put on some coal, dear, not too much, about half a shovelful should do." Gosh, this is an old oven. How do you know how hot it is? Well, I should be able to tell by now. I've been baking in this old oven long enough. If your grandfather wasn't so mean, he'd have bought me one of those new electric stoves years ago. One with a dial that showed you how hot the oven is. I slid half a shovel of coal in. Turn the top damper, the one on the back, said Granny. Yes, that's enough, and pull the other right out so that it sucks the flames around the oven. I turned and pulled the dampers as she asked, and thought I heard the flutter of flames sucking around the oven, making it hotter. Here, have a stir for good luck, she said, handing me the bowl and the big wooden spoon. Why is it good luck? Well, it just is. 3 times, so you see the bottom of the bowl each time. Do you have a wish? Yes, Don't tell me what you wished. That'll bring bad luck. Granny lined the baking tin with grease-proof paper and smeared it with butter as I swallowed my secret wish. She scraped the cake mixer into the tin. I nodded and licked the wooden spoon, ran my finger round the bowl and licked it again. Tastes better like this before it's cooked. You can't just sit around eating cake mixture, Jack. That wouldn't be right. But it tastes really good. Imagine what your grandfather would say if I gave him a spoonful of cake mixture instead of a piece of cake with his cup of tea. He'd say it tastes good like his compost. That man, he probably would. Granny, if Grandad drew the first map of New Zealand, then who made the country? Are we on that again? Well, I want to know. Well, if you must know, I did. You made New Zealand? Well, someone had to do it. Otherwise your grandfather would have had nothing to draw the map of. How did you make it, Granny? Like making a cake. I knew all the things that had to go into it, and I just put them together and mixed them up. The mountains, the rivers, the lakes, and the plains. And the beaches and the creek and the bush, I added. And did you put it in a baking tin and put it in the oven? You don't do that when you're making a country, said Granny. You stir it up till you get the mixture just right, then you leave it alone, and after that it looks after itself. Did it cook itself? Well, you could say that. Is that why it's still smoking and steaming, at Rotorua? Yes. So some of the bits of New Zealand haven't finished cooking yet, the hot bits. Maybe that's what they mean, said Granny, when they say New Zealand's a young country. A bit like a cake when you've just taken it out of the oven and tipped it out of the baking tin and it's still hot and you have to set it on the wire rack to cool, I said. Yeah, it is like that. Now get out of my way while I pop this into the oven. Well, that's really different to what Grandad said. Ugh, Lordy, what did he say? Something about you fishing up New Zealand from under the sea. Isn't that an old Māori story? I seem to remember someone or other pulling up New Zealand. It was Maui, I told Granny. They told us at school that he fished up the North Island with his grandmother's jawbone. Granny stood up from the oven and put her hands on her hips and stared at me. What other rubbish has that grandfather of yours been telling you now? If he's been saying that I've got a jawbone shaped like a fish hook, well, just for that, he's not going to taste a crumb of this beautiful cake. And as for him drawing the first map of New Zealand, ask him who he thinks Captain Cook was. And didn't Abel Tasman draw a bit of the coast before that? And there was probably others before him too. Fishing New Zealand out with my jawbone indeed. Muttering angrily, Granny bent to adjust the dampers again, and I quickly slid out the back door. I was going to tell Grandad to hide in the bamboo patch instead of coming up to the house for afternoon tea.